Multiversus began as a bold entry into the platform fighting genre, aiming to bring together characters from various Warner Bros. Franchises in a dynamic and accessible fighting experience. At its inception, the game promised fast-paced combat, unique character interactions, and a robust online experience. As it stands today, Multiversus has garnered a dedicated player base and has proven itself to be a contender in this genre. However, to ascend to the heights of the greatest platform fighter of all time, there are key areas in which it needs to evolve. Hi, my name is Bam, and welcome to Multiversus University. Today, we're going to be talking about how to make Multiversus the best platform fighter of all time. Now, we're going to go through a host of things, but we really need to begin at the beginning. Let's talk about Multiversus DNA. At its core, Multiversus has several elements that resonate with players and set it apart from other platform fighters. While much of this was lost in the transition between beta and the release version, the movement system in Multiversus was lauded for its fluidity and freedom, allowing players to express their playstyles in various ways. The ability to dodge, jump, and maneuver with precision made the game feel really responsive, and it made it exciting. People loved to move in the beta version of Multiversus. Each character in Multiversus comes with a unique toolkit that reflects their personality and source material. While the game has less moves than a typical platform fighter, Multiversus usually makes up for it by having very unique specials and has different variants of their specials depending if it's grounded or aerial, versus just making simply an aerial version of the grounded specials. The perk system adds an additional layer of strategy, enabling players to customize their characters' playstyles even further. This feature, while innovative, has potential for deeper refinement to balance gameplay and really enhance a lot of the strategic diversity. While Multiversus has a solid foundation, it faces significant challenges that prevent it from reaching its full potential. Currently, the game heavily rewards passive defensive strategies, where players focus on non-interactions to avoid risks. But what is passive and active defense? Passive defense is non-interactive, as said before. It is often a very strong tactic in the end game of platform fighters. For example, if my opponent's attack is very strong, then it makes sense for me to simply avoid the attack if possible. This becomes even stronger if the ending result of an opponent's attack is them locked into a cooldown, which is long enough for me to actually whiff punish. This becomes an even larger issue once you realize that besides the priority system versus jabs, which is a recent development, you will just lose the big sweeping hitboxes in Multiversus. Even if you have those hitboxes, so many moves has a ton of cooldown. So even if you have good hitboxes, sooner or later, it's probably optimal to simply wait and whiff punish or not interact with your opponent, which is far more in your favor. This dynamic diminishes the excitement of the game and can lead into drawn out, less engaging matches. There needs to be a clear distinction between passive and active defense, with proper risk-reward mechanics that encourage more interactions. The beta system has some issues, but they were overshadowed by the game's early success. In its current state, movement feels far more restrictive, with fewer options for approaching and feints. The problems such as sluggish dashes, limited approach options, and a lack of effective feints reduce the fluidity of gameplay. Movement continues to be an odd pain point, but also one of the greatest assets of Multiversus. Now, while the combo system has potential, the current low number of attacks and limited variations in combo routes stifle player creativity. There's a lot of clear optimal routes that reduces the need for more tactical decision making. Most enders should set up off stage or juggling, as there's less micro interactions that are worth going for. Lack of combo diversity makes the gameplay feel repetitive, and it limits the skill expression that is crucial for platform fighters' longevity. Alright, now let's talk about possible solutions. Some of these have already existed in other platform fighters, or concepts that were in the beta version of the game or release that simply just need refinement. As we talked about when describing active defense is key to engaging offense. Why? Because active defensive tools allow you to improve overall offense in a reasonable manner. For example, with a shield, burst options and approaches can be made better because there's more counterplay involved now besides simply not interacting with these offensive tactics. Now that you have a defensive tactic that can combat strong offensive options, you can create strong offensive options. This is how you bring back rock into the RPS of Multiversus, instead of just having scissors and paper. Now, let's go over the active defensive mechanics that would be great options in Multiversus. The introduction of a shield mechanic. To provide players with more defensive options that require skill and timing, rather than purely avoiding interactions. However, it would require less skill and less timing than a parry, creating a more balanced tool that will allow players to challenge large hitboxes they may not otherwise be able to interact with. Blocking is something that isn't exclusive to major platform fighters either. It's a cornerstone of the fighting game genre. While there are some possible solutions for a new active defensive mechanic, this one is tried and true. We as people shouldn't look to create the wheel unless we have a solid blueprint for a new wheel. So this one, I think, is a great tool to utilize if they cannot discover something new. Now, let's go on to a more unique defensive option. Having a new parry mechanic would also be an exciting option. There are a couple ways this can be done. Having a grounded parry that doesn't stun opponents, but is invulnerable to attacks, with a greater active window than normal parry. This would allow a stationary defensive mechanic that's less of a read and more of a solid defensive tactic. It can stop an enemy's approach, open up counterattacks on very laggy moves, but more often than not, it result in a minor frame advantage or return to neutral. Of course, the opponent would be able to utilize armor breaking tools against this, so it would allow it to have an effective counterplay strategy in tandem with it only being active for a certain amount of time. This would be effectively the equivalent of a temporary block in other fighting games, and would be done with the current system and animations in play now, which means this would be something on the dev cycle far easier to implement than anything else. A secondary option for parry would be a push block type of parry that also has a slightly larger window than a current parry, but costs more meter. It would focus on returning to neutral, positioning, and of course openings on multiple swings, like a Harley Sayer for example, or opponent continuing a jab combo and essentially whiffing it because nobody's home. Lastly, one option that would be phenomenal that I'm particularly excited about is a universal charge attack that can be dodge cancelable. Now, this would be a great defensive mechanic that actually borrows from some tools that existed in the beta. Back in the beta, characters could cancel their charge attack, and some of them had armor. It was a really cool tool to use. It was awesome for feints. It's also a strong defensive tool. However, it was a little bit too strong because there was very, very low risk, mainly because of the subsequent dodge out of the armored move still having iframes. Now, there's an easy way to balance this, and that would just be to have a charge attack, but the dodge cancel from the charge attack would have absolutely no invincibility frames. This would allow the escape to be punished. Also, when someone has an armored dodge cancel move, you can have it where the attack itself could cost 2 bars and the dodge cancel being 1 bar, effectively making this a 3-bar cancel if you go for this. Finally, having a threshold in which you can only charge to a certain extent before you can no longer dodge cancel out of the charge attack will make it effectively easier for an opponent who reads this option to punish it if the opponent guessed incorrectly. and even some unique characteristics. For example, you can do it by class, where assassins would perform a dodge-like attack instead of using armor, and their attacks could keep the opponent close range. Tanks could use an armor move, which has a wider cancel window, which would just make them stronger as tanks and knock people back. Then mages themselves can have a move that's not necessarily strong, but most importantly, will knock characters back to mid-range, and so it could be utilized to reset positioning and once again be able to zone out their opponent. All these tools could be solid tools to use, and most importantly, they allow offensive tools to be made stronger and faster without hurting the overall game. This means faster attacks. An attack with low end lag would be easier to add in the game without fear of them being overpowered due to lack of defensive tools. Now, let's take a look at one of my favorite things, movement. Movement is vital when it comes to platform fighter, and Multiversus has some great tools and some that can be improved to take it to the next step. We already saw some good things in Season 2 mid-season patch, but let's take a look at some of the other tools I think would be perfect to see in this game. Starting off with standard ground movement, speeding up the current walk-run speed would be phenomenal and a great addition to the game. Ground movement is already precise in Multiversus, but the speed and acceleration isn't enough for mid-range movement. A small boost can make ground movement solid and introduce good meterless ground movement. Let's talk about wave dashing, specifically modern wave dashing. As stated in a previous video, modern wave dashing is honestly pretty accessible, far more accessible than the melee counterpart. And the input for modern wave dashing is pretty much the exact same input as boost jumping, except for reversing the dodge and jump. So instead of doing dodge into jump, you jump into dodge. This is something that has existed for quite some time now. And with how dodge lands work, this essentially would be an instant dodge land, or IDL. It would have no invulnerability, and it'd be an excellent movement tool. It was extremely fun to use in the beta, and it's extremely fun to use in traditional fighters like tag fighters and versus games, and as well as platform fighters. I think this is an extremely easy answer to building movement back into Multiversus, and with the current meter system as it is, the movement would be extremely balanced. And again, I think the biggest thing is if there is a fear of this being hard for casuals, this input in modern wave dashing, this input is again the same thing as boost jumping, so I don't think that is a real justification as to not have that in the game. Now, next up is character specific movement. I think character specific movement is something that is absolutely phenomenal and so underrated in a lot of fighting games. Character specific movement really adds a lot of depth, and it gives characters a lot of great personality. While there were some in the beta version of the game, most of them have been removed or have become stalls versus strong neutral tools, just fun neutral tools that you can enjoy. Seeing things like Sarah 2 from Batman in the beta, which is a really cool move to like mix people up and could be done on whiff, or Batman's Glide in the beta, which can be fast followed, would move quickly, and so would actually be a supplemental movement tool to his standard fast fall options. That would be amazing to see, and I think this is where Multiversus can really push the mold and also take a little inspiration from the beta and Rivals 2. Rivals 2 being one of the greatest games when it comes to character specific movement throughout the entirety of the cast. Lastly is chain dodges. Now, chain dodges is a recent thought that I had a while back to improve the game. While dodges currently cannot be chained together due to their strength, creating a custom dodge with no invulnerability would be great to see. Having it only accessible through doing a dodge initially and then making those subsequent dodges cost half a bar can allow some fun, low meter movement that can still be punished. Also, canceling out these dodges could still cost what they normally would, and it would allow for some fun movement that still would be detrimental if overused. And I think that would be fun, engaging, and open up the game for more variance and honestly more fun gameplay. Alright, let's talk about approach options. Approach options in Multiversus are really telegraphed because there's a low pool for a lot of characters in terms of approach options. There's also very little options to mix up timings and virtually no feints. However, this can be altered with simple changes. Starting off with faster moves and having more attack cancels, you could give players more opportunities to create opportunities for baiting, punishing opponents, and build more active engagement. Also, introducing new attacks or class-specific moves to diversify gameplay and add layers to strategy. This would solve the low move count issue and create another opportunity to make a more useful move for characters. These kinds of approaches were often seen as too toxic or strong due to weak active defense options. Now, when you have an active defense option up close, like a shield, like the push block parry, or the charge attack dodge cancels we were talking about earlier, now all of a sudden you can create strong offensive tools that could stand up to the strength of true defensive options. Now, let's speak about the overall fluidity of Multiversus. Multiversus sometimes lacks smoothness in its gameplay, with moments of clunkiness that can disrupt the overall experience. Enhancing the game's fluidity would be greatly beneficial for both casual players and competitive enthusiasts. So let's explore some strategies to achieve this. Let's start with improving fast fall mechanics and reducing the attack floatiness to make aerial combat more responsive and more ground mix-ups. When it comes to fast falling, having a quicker fast fall now allows you to utilize short hop aerials, empty short hops, and mixing grounded options to have stronger offensive pressure. Going into attack floatiness in Multiversus, moves currently will always finish and then go into their end lag before landing, making it so that end lag is less when a character finishes an aerial but has made contact with the ground would make the game feel so much smoother and less jarring when characters are just floating in end lag right above the floor. This would give more benefit to players for doing aerials low to the ground, and for most people it's intuitive and just makes sense. This would also result in not only having more options but also more combos, and it's something that would be increasing the fluidity of the game while still retaining the ease for casuals who may have problems doing aerial input and landing before the hitbox is active. Lastly, platform play. Creating fun platform options allows platforms to be a tool for approaches and defense, versus just being a complete hindrance to the game. A lot of times, whether it's offense or defense, platforms just simply don't feel that fun to utilize in Multiversus, and most people would elect to have no platforms at all. Would love to see this changed, and even Multiversus to put their unique spin on how to utilize platforms. And lastly, visual acuity matters. Having hitboxes and hurtboxes that really match up. There's always going to be certain disjoints in games, but as it currently stands from casual level to top level, there's a ton of complaints about these hitboxes, and I hope we do get those addressed once again. For Multiversus to stand out among the greatest of platform fighters, it must achieve a delicate balance between accessibility for casual players and depth for competitive enthusiasts. By refining its gameplay to be intuitive and engaging, the game can offer immediate fun and gratification for newcomers, while providing advanced techniques, strategic complexity, and diverse character designs that reward mastery for seasoned players. Ensuring that both casual and competitive audience find value in the game is key to expanding its reach and building a vibrant community. If there's a concern that players might not understand the mechanics, the solution is to make them simple and provide proper tutorials. No need to hollow out a game for simplicity's sake. Even casual players appreciate the existence of fun, intuitive tools that they can learn and later on master. To accomplish this, Multiversus needs to continuously evolve its mechanics and prioritize active community engagement, ensuring that players of all skill levels feel included and challenged. This means offering a variety of game modes, designing characters for both accessibility and depth in mind, and having variations in where people land. Also, implementing mechanics that are easy to grasp, but are very rich in strategic possibilities. A robust tutorial system is crucial for helping players understand the mechanics without compromising the game's complexity. By creating an environment where casual fun and competitive depth can coexist harmoniously, Multiversus can broaden its appeal and solidify its place as a defining title in the platform fighting genre. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's something that I've been wanting to make for quite some time, and I hope that it's something that's not only fun to the community, but hopefully the devs find some kind of insight from an OG just rambling who loves fighting games, who loves platform fighters, and who really loves Multiversus. This is Bam. I'll see y'all next time. Class dismissed.